Good evening, everyone. So welcome to Continue Luis once more. And as we all know, we usually have on the second Monday of each month our meeting in English. And tonight we're um, we're going to talk about chapter 1 on the Gospel according to Spiritism. And before we start, I'd like to apologize. Hendrik is not feeling very well, so he asked me to be here in his place to talk, to give his talk. But next month he will be here. So tonight you're going to have to stick with me. I'm going to be here from beginning to end. So it's about an hour of me talking and talking and talking. So I hope I don't. I go well. So. And also tonight is the very first night before we say our initial prayer, is the very first night that we are doing this meeting live on the internet. So anybody, anywhere, if they have the link naturally, can listen and see us here. Not you, right? Only me. But I hope that this is another tool for all of us, maybe when we are traveling, maybe when we are out of the country, maybe when we can't go for some reason, that we can still join the group and listen and hear what we are talking and discussing here. Naturally, it will be much better if you come, right? So that we don't have only empty chairs. So it's very good for everybody. It would be good for everybody to come and join us here. But before we start with our message and with our talk of the night, let's do our initial prayer to try to focus a little bit more in what we are about to discuss, in what we are about to talk, so that we can, by raising our thoughts, raising our hearts to our dear Creator, allow the power of His love to touch us deeply, so that we can understand that the laws that He created are for the best of all of us. So let's say, dear God, we would like to thank You once again for our lives, not only for being incarnated here, but for having been created, for being a spirit and having the conscience that we are much more than just the body that we have right now. May Your love for all of us be felt tonight in our words, in the words and teachings of our dear Master Jesus that came here for us, to look for us, to show us the way, to show us the truth, and to show us the light. May we follow His footsteps towards You, towards Your love, and towards Your perfection. May the good spirits bless us all, not only now, but always. So be it. So tonight we usually have the reading from the book Our Daily Bread, and since I don't have the book with me, I'm going to use technology. I have the message right here, and I'm going to read from this piece here. And it's message number 77 of the book Our Daily Bread. And the message is entitled To Respond, to answer, to give an answer, to respond to somebody. And Paul said in his letter to the Colossians on chapter 4, verse number 6, let your conversation always be gracious, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how to answer everyone. So he's asking us in this very, very small verse to, when we are talking to somebody, for us to be gracious, that we can season that conversation with salt. We all know that when we add a little bit of salt to basically any kind of food, it allows the food to have a better taste. Right? If we put too much, it's too much. If we put too little, it's too little. So we have to find that right spot, right? So that we may know how to answer, how to talk, how to respond to everybody. And so let's see what Emmanuel tells us through the mediumship of Chico Xavier when he made a comment on this small verse from Paul. He says, the act of responding beneficially to this is a hard word. It's hard in Portuguese and it's hard in English, but I'd say it's harder in English. Heterogeneous minds, which means different kinds of minds, requires superior qualities that the individual should make an effort to acquire. Points of view cannot be directed indiscriminately at fellow humans as they struggle with one another in evolutionary and redemptive tasks. It is necessary to address each one judiciously. One should not respond to someone working in the countryside by mentioning circumstances in the city. One should not use highly scientific remarks with someone complaining about the harshness of his or her individual path. First of all, one must not be disagreeable to the listener. One should moderate the verbal attitude with a true grasp of life's problems. It is our duty to make our contribution so that those who have strayed away from simplicity and usefulness may realign themselves. Every response in an important matter is like medicine. One must apply the dose with its effects in mind. Each individual will tolerate and benefit from the proper dosage. Even the solutions of truth and love must not be administered without this criterion. Applied in inappropriate doses, even the truth could destroy, just as love can cause damage. Even if questioned by the greatest evildoer in the world, you should maintain a pleasant and dignified manner to inform or to enlighten. Knowing how to respond is a virtue from the sphere of celestial wisdom. For your own sake, do not forget the best way of caring for each other, of caring for each individual. So, Paul uses the metaphor, the example of salt. Emmanuel here uses the metaphor of a medicine. So let's say I have a headache. And then I go to the meds cabinet, open there, and I find there a medicine that alleviates my pain. And then I go and read the prescription, read what it says there. And then it says for you not to take, or for us not to take more than 1 or 2 pills or 2 doses every 4 hours or every 6 hours, every 8 hours, whatever it is. And then I have a headache, and then I take the medicine, and then the headache doesn't go away, and then I take another one, and then the headache doesn't go away, and then I take another one. And I don't use the timing that it's there written for me to use it. Maybe nothing will happen at that specific time. But depending on the dosage, depending on how much I put inside my body, it can harm me, and it will harm me. It will, instead of helping me, maybe it will allow me to not feel headache anymore at that moment. But maybe I'm going to have a liver problem because the medicine was too strong for my body. What Emmanuel is asking us to think about is when I'm talking to someone, when I am about to say something, somebody comes to me and then asks me about, his life or her life or something that's happening with a friend, with a parent, with a relative, and I go and the person trusts me. What am I supposed to say to that person at that moment? How much should I put into my words so that that person can use? Is it too much? Is it too little? How do I know? I only know through time. If it's the first time that's happening, I can be excused if I give too much or if I give too little, because I still don't know. That's how, for example, science works. Let's imagine 50 years ago, 60 years ago, 100 years ago, there was no Tylenol, there was no ibuprofen. So how did they find those medicines? How did they find the right dosage for us? It was through time, by testing in people, by allowing people to, take only one and then take another one tomorrow. And then they will say, well, one each day, maybe it's too little. So let's try 2 a day. Let's try 3 a day. And let's see how it goes. And then they will find out that, no, if you take 1 every hour, it's too much. But maybe 1 every day, it's too little. So we have to be testing. But these are the very first times that we are doing something. Once we establish that there is a certain rule, and that I can learn this rule from other people, I can start taking other people's examples and employing them in my life. So I will certainly, for example, let's imagine a child comes to me and asks, how long will it take for me to get from here to the moon? A child doesn't even know what is 5 miles. A child doesn't even know what is 1 mile. A child doesn't understand what is a year. How can I explain it to her that it's a year, that it's 2 years, 3 years? I have to use the right words, the right way of talking to that child, to her, to him, or to her, to explain it. Oh, if the child already, for example, is 2 or 3, maybe she or he already knows and understand that, well, you're going to have a birthday, right? So once you do, so you just made you're just 3, so you'll be 4 a year from now, and then you will be 5 a year from then. So when you turn 6, instead of saying, oh, it's 3 years, maybe she will understand. But for us here, if I say, for example, oh, Nancy, this will happen 3 years from now, she already knows what it is because she lived through the years and she understands precisely what 3 years are. But not everybody understands it. So we need to acknowledge how much the other person can understand for us to tell or to speak to that person in a way that the other person understands. And then he gives an example here. He says, well, if you're talking to a person that lives on the countryside, that doesn't, let's say, not these days anymore as much, but let's imagine 50, 60 years ago. So you live in a city, and then you go to the countryside. How can you use examples of city life if the person lives on the countryside and doesn't have roads, for example, doesn't see, never saw television? How are you going to use an example based on television if the person doesn't even understand what a television is? So we have to adapt the knowledge, and whatever the answer that I need to to give to a person, or whatever knowledge, whatever information that I need to give to a person, we have to adapt to the other person. And thinking the other way around, let's say that I am the one who is receiving the information. What should I do if I don't understand? If I really want to learn, if I really want to know what the person is talking about, I should make an effort to really pay attention. And if I didn't understand, to politely ask the person to explain me better. And if I see, or if I think that it's being too much to ask, maybe I save a few words in my head. And after that conversation is done, if the person doesn't have time anymore, these days is much easier than it was in the past. These days I go to a computer, type the word, and I will have the answer. Or at least I will have a general explanation to which I can understand. But naturally, Emmanuel here is not only talking about the knowledge of the mind, of reason. He's also talking about the knowledge that we give to other people from the heart, the feeling that we send to another person. And he says, well, be careful with the types of truth and how you're exposing the truth to some people, because it may be too much at that specific moment. You can give too much of that medicine, and then the person will be kind of lost. It will be like if you put a lot of salt in your food, and then you will be able to, you will see it that, oh, maybe this is good, but it's not good now. So maybe I won't eat anymore. So, and he says, be careful with the amount of truth that you put in what you're saying. Be careful with the amount of love that you use. Because some people saying that love the other person too much, you can maybe destroy the relationship or destroy the other person because, I made this out of love. And then I would say, the person would say, well, but the other one never did anything for his life because you did everything for the other one. So how will the other person learn? A mother, a father, or brother could come to a sister, to one of the siblings, and say, well, I love you a lot. Let me do all your homework. This is not love, or it is maybe love, but it's being applied in the wrong way. It's giving too much because the other person needs to learn as well. So how will the other person learn if I do everything for the other person? So sometimes giving too much love in this sense, it's not giving too much love. It's actually not preparing the person for the world. So we really need to learn, so that we finish here with what Paul says, put the right amount of salt in the food or in the conversation, in what you are about to tell the other person. Let's try to find that right spot. Maybe I will, and people who cook here will see, they, first time you let's say you made a pan of rice or beans, green beans, whatever. How much salt do I put here? And then put too much or too little. And then you can't eat it because it's so salty that you have to throw it away. So finding the right amount of salt, it takes experience, it takes time, and it's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. It's perfectly fine. But once we find the right amount, we have to memorize it or find a way to say, hey, this is the amount of salt. That's why we have measures, right? We have the spoons, we have all those things. And so for this amount of rice, I'm going to put this amount of salt. And basically that's it. Sometimes if I put too much, it's maybe because I'm not focusing. So we have to go back and focus and do it better next time, and so on. So we go learning and learning. And that's the good advice that Paul gives to us. We all live in society. We all have conversations with other people. So let's try to learn how much salt we put in our conversation with other people so that we can learn to live better with ourselves and with the others. So that was message 77 on the book Our Daily Bread from Chico Xavier and written from the spirit world from by Emmanuel. And so, as I said in the beginning, Hendrik is not feeling very well tonight, so he apologized and asked me to be here with you guys. But he promised that if he's feeling better next month, he will come and he will talk to you, which I usually find it much better than myself. So hopefully he will be here in a month, more or less from now. And as we said, the second Monday of each month, we have this conversation in English here. And tonight, following what we've been doing, we started a few months ago talking about the gospel according to Spiritism, and we already ran through the introduction, and now we are on chapter 1, the first chapter of the gospel according to Spiritism. So this is one of the covers. There are many other covers around. You can find the book online, you can download it, you can buy it. So highly recommend for you to have your book with you. So maybe you want to read a little bit more to understand more, have questions for us. Feel free to come to us and ask if you didn't understand something. Then I'll try to put the right amount of salt so that I can explain to you in the best way that I can. So tonight, Chapter 1 of the Gospel According to Spiritism is entitled, I Have Not Come to Destroy the Law. And in this chapter, Allan Kardec, he takes a passage right in the beginning from Matthew, and on the Sermon on the Mount, chapter 5, verses 17 and 18, when Jesus says that he did not come to destroy the law. So when Jesus came, more or less 2,000 years ago, and he was around with us, amongst us, teaching, he was supposed, people would believe, and he told this himself, but people believed that at the time there would come a Messiah. So that Messiah would come and complete the law. He would come and fulfill God's promises. The problem is, a lot of these people who believed that the Messiah would come would believe that this Messiah would come to bring the kingdom of God to earth. A lot of people would believe that this would be a material kingdom. So we have the Romans ruling the world at that time. So the Messiah would probably be the new king, destroy everything, and form a new kingdom, and be the new king, be the new emperor, whatever the name they would use. But then there's the law. There's the law of the world, and there's the law of God. The law of the world usually is created by us, humans. The law of God is there. It was created by God, and it's set since we don't know when. Since he created it, I don't know when. What Jesus comes and says is, hey, look, and we studied a little bit of this when we talked a few months ago, when we talked about Moses. And then we talked a little bit about this when we talked about Jesus. That when Moses came, there was the civil law, which is the law that rules us, that used to rule the people there. For example, the most famous one is an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. So if you take the eye of a person, the other person or somebody on that side has the right to take the eye from you, or if I took a tooth, the person would take a tooth from me. That was a rule, that was a law, but that's not God's law. That's the law of the city, the law of the state, the law of the country, the law of the empire, whatever the name is. But then there's God's law. And God's law is represented by the Ten Commandments, which starts by love your God above everything else, right? You shall not kill. You shall not steal. You shall honor your mother and your father, and so on. This is God's law, because it's not a physical, a material law. It's a law that guides us from the inside. It's a moral law, as we call it in Spiritism. So when Jesus says, I did not come, or I have not come to destroy the law, he is in some degree saying that he did not come to destroy not even the physical law, the law of the country, but more importantly, he did not come to destroy what was said before him in terms of God's law. Why am I saying this? I'm saying this because in Spiritism, we, and I include myself in this, tended to, and I'm going to try to make this point very clear, tended to disregard, throw away the Old Testament. We all know the Bible, right? At least the name. But we all know that the Bible is composed of a lot of books. We call it one book, but it's actually a lot of books merged, combined in one book or in one piece. But there are lots of different books. The first part of the Bible is called the Old Testament, which are the books that were written before Jesus was here. And then there's the second part of the Bible, which is composed of other books and letters, which were written after Jesus was here. Because Jesus himself didn't write anything. He only taught people. He only spoke to people. And then the disciples, the apostles came, some of them, and wrote what he was doing. And then later on, other disciples and other apostles wrote letters to other groups. So let's imagine, for example, that I am traveling to a different country, and I'm feeling alone, trying to create a new Spiritist group in a country that doesn't have Spiritism, that Spiritism is not there yet. And then I know a friend that lives here, and that friend sends me a book, sends me letters. That was Paul. Paul knew some people that were in different countries, in different cities, and then he would write letters to those people to teach them, to show them what he was learning when he was studying the gospel of Jesus, when he was thinking about the teachings of Jesus Christ. So these letters were written, and these books were written, and they were merged together, compiled together, and today it's the part of the Bible that's called the New Testament. So the Bible is composed of two parts, two main parts, the Old Testament and the New Testament. So we Spiritists, and sometimes some Christians, as we are Christians as well, we tend to overlook the Old Testament, as if we tend to throw it away because we misjudge some passages, don't understand some of the words, don't understand some of the concepts, and then we think that they're saying something when actually they're not saying what we think they are because we don't understand. Right? I am not, as you can tell by my accent, that I'm not American. So I will not understand some slangs, some words, some expressions that Americans use Why? Because I didn't learn here. Today, for example, I was walking to the supermarket, right? And something came up in my head, and I don't know why. I said, well, if I had to explain this to an American, what would I say? That's what I thought. What would I say? And I said, well, I don't remember exactly what it was, but I'm going to say, let's say, I never saw, oh, there's a word that I learned when I was here, mattress. In Brazil, I think it's a word that you learn as soon as you learn to speak, because every night you sleep in a mattress, right? So you're in a crib, then there's a mattress. So in Portuguese, of course, you know what that thing is, but you're learning the language. You're not thinking about sleeping, let's say. So you don't know the name of that thing. When I got here around 11, 12 years ago, I realized that I never heard the name mattress before, and I didn't know how to say it. So I was thinking, if I have to talk to a person about a mattress and I don't know the name, I don't know the word, how will I say it? And naturally, I'm going to try to describe the situation. Oh, when I go to sleep, when I go to bed, I sleep on top of something. And then I will ask the person, what is the name of that thing that you put on the bed? And probably the American or the person that speaks English would say, well, it's a mattress. And then I would say, oh yeah, that's right. And then I would learn the word. When we are talking about the Old Testament, we don't live on that culture anymore. We don't live 3,000 years ago anymore. We're so removed from that time that some expressions, some ideas are lost to us. Then we would have to study those for us to really understand what they are trying to do, what they are trying to teach us. And because sometimes we don't understand it, we throw it away. And then we think that that's not worth it. But in this first chapter here of the Gospel according to Spiritism, what Jesus is teaching us is, I have not come to destroy the law. Meaning, we have to take a look at the Old Testament. We really need to go and study. We really need to try to understand what is there and get the best of what is there. Because if we stop to think just for a while, and I'm going to get to Spiritism very soon, but I think I need this introduction so that we can get to what Kardec talks about Spiritism here. When Jesus was living, when he was walking among us, when he was talking to people, when he was going to the lake to talk to people, to fish, when he was on the mount sitting with the apostles, with the disciples, with the group teaching stuff, and let's say that he needed to talk about God, what would he use to read? Or what would he use to cite, to say? From what? Would he use this book, the Gospel according to Spiritism? Of course not, because this book is 150 years old, a little bit more. What would he use then?
The Old Testament.
He would use the Old Testament. That's what he would use. And most of the things that he said, and if you take any Bible and you get the words that Jesus is actually saying, that the disciples are saying, right, and that the apostles, right, John, Paul, John, Mark, Luke, and Matthew, the words that Jesus is saying, if we pay attention, we will see like small letters on the sentence, like say B, and then in the bottom of the page, you will see that, and then you'll see that small B, and then there would be a comment or another passage, usually in the Old Testament, from where Jesus is taking that teaching and using in his teachings. So if Jesus used the Old Testament to say some things, it's not something that he came to destroy. Maybe he came to update a little bit more, or maybe he came to explain. Maybe he came to live that book. And that's what when he says, I didn't come to destroy it. I came to show you. He came to show us. Not to explain just with words, but to live his life. To show us how to live that law. How to live what is to honor father and mother. To show us what is to love God above everything. What is thou shalt not kill. What is not to kill anything. He came to show us, not only to speak to us, but to live that message. But then he died, right? He passed away. Well, somebody killed him, right? Didn't die of natural causes. Somebody put him in the on the cross, and he was killed. Risen after that, and then we all know the story, or basically we all know the story. And then he moves on. Is Jesus still alive? We all think so, right? If we didn't believe that he was still alive, what would we be doing here, right? So he died, but he didn't die, right? I think that maybe this is one of the most powerful teachings of him, is that he didn't die. So when we believe and when we know, when we feel that we know that he didn't die, we feel the same for ourselves. We don't die. We keep going. And if he was able, for example, to talk to Moses, to Elijah, if he was able to remove some bad spirits, or as some translations prefer, some demons that were abusing, people that were possessed by those bad spirits, and Jesus talked to those people, to those spirits. It means that there are spirits, right? It means that there are people that die and that they are alive. That's where Spiritism enters the picture. Spiritism, simply put, the same way that Jesus didn't come to destroy what was before, Spiritism didn't come to destroy anything that was before. Absolutely nothing. It came only to expose a little bit more stuff that was covered. It is as if, that play that kids usually do, right? What they want to hide from us. What do? They get a shirt or get a hat, and put in front of his eyes, right, or her eyes, and then they think that the other person are not seeing him or her, right? Cover my eyes, and then as he doesn't see, he thinks that nobody is seeing him. Right? So what Spiritism does is, to some degree, and little by little, removes part of the veil from our eyes so that we can see it further. We can see clearer what Jesus could not say at the time. The same way we cannot tell a child everything. It will not understand everything. It has to go little by little. It has to come in small pieces. And every child is different. So some will go quicker, some will go slower, depending on the child. So the revelations that Spiritism brings to us They are there, not hidden anymore. The books are there. There's no hidden books anywhere anymore. Everybody can get the books, read for themselves, and try to learn. And try to go deeper. Or if I prefer this side, I study more of this side. If I prefer this side, I study more of this side. So what Spiritism brings to us is, opens up the idea that Jesus came here to live the message. Live the message. Then he showed us that we do not die, that we go on. And based on a lot of other conversations that he had, he also showed us that we would return, that we could return, and that we would return to continue our evolution. He said at one point, for example, be perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect. Okay. I will die when I am 80. Let's say that I will die when I'm 120. I hope not, because if I'm ugly now, I'll be very, very much uglier when I'm 120 years old. So I hope I die earlier than 120. But when I get to 120, will I be perfect? Will I know everything that needs to be learned? Of course not. There's no way that a person can learn the whole universe in 100 years. 100 years ago, there was no automobiles. There were no cars. There were cars, but I mean, these days, last Saturday, right? We were here, had a friend that we were talking outside, and then he came to me and showed me a video of a motorcycle. Right? It is a prototype. The guys are building this motorcycle. The motorcycle doesn't fall. It doesn't fall. And it shows the motorcycle working. So the motorcycle is there standing, right? And then the guy gets a car and then puts the rear and then comes backwards and hits the motorcycle. The motorcycle does this and then turns. Doesn't fall. 100 years ago, if you say this to a person, he will say, you're crazy. Let's put him in an institution, because there's no way that a thing that only has two wheels will never fall. It's impossible, the person would say. How can we do this? 100 years later, there we go. I remember me, right? I remember myself. I was talking to a person 15, 20 years ago, and the person was saying, I have this program in the computer that allows me to talk to a person that's in Japan right here, right now in the computer. It's like, this is not possible. I said that. Today, we talk over the phone with video. It doesn't matter where the person is, basically. We see on television all the time, we see people in the space stations talking to Earth, right? From heavens, right? From the sky, talking to here. So, and we don't see the conversation coming down, but we see the person on the TV and the other. So, how can we learn to be perfect as God is perfect in one life only? So, it's not that it's not there in the Old Testament or in the New Testament. It is there. But the same way that we didn't have the capability probably to understand it fully there, maybe we still don't have the whole capability or the full capability of understanding everything. But what Spiritism does is opens up the world for us to see these teachings, to see this information in a different view, expanding the view, removing the veil from our eyes. But naturally, Spiritism doesn't solve everything. Let's imagine, for example, and some people would say, oh, Spiritism will solve all the world's problems. No, it will not. We were not created to live alone. So there will not be one person to solve all the problems of the world. The solution to all the problems of the world is us as individuals working together to solve the problem. Not one to solve the problem of everybody. So Spiritism will not solve the problem of everybody. Spiritism is one science. It's only one. We need to work together with all the other Christian religions, right? Spiritism, Protestantism, Catholicism, whatever the other ones. But only between Christians? No. We need to work with Jews. We need to work with Muslims. We need to work with, because every single person in this universe, in this earth, is important, is a very important part of the solution of the problem. But it is unfortunately still very common, I would say, that we tend to root for a party, root for a soccer team, for a football team, for a basketball team. And then we take parties. Oh no, I like this one, but I don't like this one. I like that person, but I don't like the other person. I like women, but I don't like men. I like men, but I don't like women. I like white, but I don't like black. I like black, but I don't like red. And I choose and pick. And then instead of gathering together, we separate. It is all fine if we separate. Because naturally, I tend to, if I like apples and the other person likes oranges, that's fine. I like my apple and the other person likes her or his oranges. But what does it have to do if I like apples and the other person likes oranges? If we two decide, or if we two find out that we both love bananas, why fight? And we all have at least one thing in common. Let's say a person is not religious. So because we could say, oh, we all believe in God. So let's take the point that some people don't believe in God. Right? We are all human. We all have blood. There's nobody with blue bloods, although some people believe that they have blue bloods, right? Oh no, I was born in this. No. Cut your arm and you see that your blood is red, just like mine. So we have stuff in common. Something that unites us, for example, is maybe not all of us know who our fathers are, but it's less unlikely that we don't know who our mothers were. Maybe our father ran away, as unfortunately a lot of men still do these days, don't take the responsibility of creating a child, but a mother has to bear the child for 9 months at least, right? Some less than this, but you'll know who your mother is, basically, most of us. So we can always find something in common with the other people. So Spiritism is not the solution for all the problems. Maybe it's a tool that is good for me to understand and to satisfy my search for knowledge, my search for a better world, my search for a better me. But to some people, it's better if they find that in Buddhism, for example, they find the teachings to be better for them. What is the problem? Or the person is a Protestant, or is a Roman Catholic, or is a Catholic of the Orthodox Greek Church. What is the problem? What is the difficulty in this? What Spiritism does, though, is that it allows us to a certain extent, observe the situation that we live in from a different perspective. Let's say, not from a better perspective than others, but from a different perspective than the perspectives that are presented to us by other groups. And it allows us to understand this, that we understand in a different way, but understand that we are all brothers and sisters. And then I go back to what Jesus said, I have not come to destroy the law. What law was he talking about? The law of God. Moses brought the law of God, the Ten Commandments. What is the first commandment? Love your God above everything else. If we were created by God, we are all God's creatures. Then we are all brothers and sisters. Spiritism doesn't separate anything. Spiritism comes to unite all of us. Just like every single religion should do. At least from the Spiritist perspective, I have not come, Jesus tells us, right? I have not come just to separate people. When he says that once he enters a house, he will separate people, he is referring to the idea that, unfortunately, some people will not understand the message. And because they will not understand the message, there will be mother against father, father against son, son against mother, daughter against father, and the family can split up. But not because of his teaching, rather because of the understanding of his teaching. When Spiritism arrives, the teachings of Spiritism show us and gives us this focus on, hey, look, you know what Jesus said. We know what we have in the Old Testament. What are some of the teachings of the Jews? We know that we don't die, but we don't focus on this. And then we become more materialistic because we only tend to think as if everything that I'm doing only affects this life here, only affects my next 50 years, 60 years, 10 years, 5 years. Spiritism shows us that everything that I do, I carry. While I'm living in my body, and while I'm living outside of my body, once I die. And I carry the consequences of everything that I do. Be the consequences negative ones, but hopefully the good consequences of the good acts, of the good deeds that I perform in my day-to-day life. And once we have that perspective, that whole world in front of us, instead of just focusing on the terrible things that happen here, we can understand how some of these great spirits of the past, the great names of the past, let's say, some of the first martyrs, like Stephen, that was stoned to death, the first martyr of Christianity, and that Paul was there and allowed Stephen to be stoned to death because Stephen was talking about Jesus and about this life that doesn't end here. But Paul was so veiled, he couldn't see. He was so enraged by that message, but that message of freedom that doesn't allow us to see the powers of the world as the biggest things that happen, that we have, allows us to set us free. And then Stephen dies. Paul keeps living, doesn't understand what's going on, is visited by Jesus himself, sees at that time the message, how powerful that message of that man who was born, who was killed, and now he didn't die yet. He's still alive. How come? And then, to me, is amazing how that, at least for me, how that perception shifts, changes the way that I see the world. And I make the comparison sometimes to a child. When I say to the child, to the boy or to the girl, for example, don't do this, whatever it is, and the child starts screaming or starts crying and want to do it, and I say no. What if that child could see at that moment how I am seeing? That what she wants to do, although she really wants to do it, it's not good for him or for her. That what she is trying to do at that moment will cause pain in her. I gave the child a chocolate or a sweet, whatever it is, once, twice, and then the boy starts to scream for more, and I say no. It will not understand. It will become, the boy will be very angry with me, for example. And the boy will not understand, right? But let's imagine that one day I'm not home, and for some reason I forgot the same sweets on the table. And then the boy came, ate one, ate two, ate three, ate the whole pot. And then I arrive, I don't see the sweets. And being a very patient man, being a very good man, being a very wise man, I do nothing. I just wait. You all know that this story didn't happen to me, right? Because I'm not patient. So this is another person. I wait. 15 minutes later, I hear the boy crying. My belly hurts, my belly hurts, my belly hurts. If I were as I am, I would say, I told you, right? I told you, but we shouldn't do that. So that's why the man in that story didn't do that. He said, he looked at the boy and said, how many did you eat? So, he doesn't want to say it. So you wait. Remember that yesterday I gave you only 2, and you were angry. Yeah, how many did you eat today? He will not say it. He will not say that he ate 15. He will say, I ate 4. Right? I only ate 4. The other ones I threw them away. So right. So that's how we behave usually. I only ate 4. See, that's why I didn't want to give it to you. It's not because I don't want to give it to you. It's because it's not good for you. I thought you had understood it yesterday, but you didn't understand. You ate 4. So now you know that I'm not doing this to punish you. I'm not doing this to make you cry. No, I'm trying to teach you
that there are limits to stuff. How I look at Spiritism is the same way. Spiritism doesn't force us to do anything. Spiritism opens our eyes and says, look, Jesus taught this to us. I will die, but I will not die. What happens after we die? And then Spiritism delves into this. And then we have a whole range of books talking about the spiritual life. Why do we learn about the spiritual life? Well, to prepare to be there. How do we prepare to be there? Here. That's what Spiritism teaches us. If you eat more than 2 candies, depending on how many candies you eat, maybe if you eat 1 more, maybe you have no problem. But if you eat 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 more, prepare the bathroom, right? Prepare it, leave it ready for you.
Yeah.
That's basically what Spiritism does. It's a science in terms of we study that realm of possibilities that some people see as possibilities and we see as truth, that we don't die, that we are spirits, that we continue after the body goes away. Body stays, I go on. My conscience, if I don't want to call it spirits, doesn't matter. The names don't matter. What matters is the idea that I am a being. I am a being outside of my body. I am a being that doesn't need the body. Spiritism is that science that shows us that we move on, that we live on, and shows the consequences of this. So if I keep living, what is the consequence of me keep going? Is that everything that I do reflects on my future. And this, in and on itself, should allow us to say, man, I should then be more careful with what I think, with what I say, but most importantly, with what I do with my life. So, Adriana, please, 2 chocolates only. But it's up to you as it's up to me. This afternoon, so we can wrap it up. I didn't follow my own advice. Yeah, I didn't follow my own advice. I said, I'm only going to eat 3. I ate 4. But I'm good. They were small, so and they were not big. But yeah, naturally, there's more in these topics. And so once again, this was taken at least a little bit from chapter 1 of the Gospel according to Spiritism. Items on tonight's topic, items 5, 6, and 7. And I hope that we are all on the same path, walking and gliding towards the message of our dear brother and friend, Jesus. I wish you all a great night, and I would like to thank you very much for being here and for paying attention and for smiling on my bad jokes as well. So now, as we wrap up this first part, we will